Hello, I'm Jonathan, and welcome to the Tamworth FC Social, a podcast all about Tamworth Football Club. This time, we're talking about why we choose to watch the Lambs. Don't forget, you can follow us on social media at TFC Social Pod. You can click subscribe below this video and switch notifications on to be updated when we upload new episodes. This time then, I'm joined by Brett, and for his first ever time on the podcast, I'd like to welcome Chris. Hello, Chris. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and how long you've been watching Tamworth?
How you doing, guys? You right? So yeah, I've been going for I think longer than thought. Actually, I think we discussed it at Banbury, me and Brett, and it turns out I'm nearly a quarter of a century in now, so 23 years. So yeah, it's a long haul.
But worth it, I'm sure. So you two both met through watching Tamworth, is that right?
Yeah, so I think the good thing about following the club, it's lots of different ages and people with different backgrounds could all meet and things like that, and that's how we met really. So we had a great time up and down the country, and friendship grew from there, really. They kind of like kept my eye on him for a little bit. 'Cause he was a bit younger than me, obviously.
Is that sound accurate, Brett?
Yeah, I think he still has to keep his eye on me now most of the time.
Do you remember your first game that you would have either gone to at the same time or at least gone to together as like mates?
Must have been the conference. We used to go on the coach and that, didn't we? So it would have been like we used to go to Grays and places like that.
I'm trying to think whether the Crawley Ball on tour was before or after the rearranged Scarborough on a Tuesday night.
I think the Scarborough one was probably before actually, because that was a long time ago.
So it was potentially either of those two, or maybe Kidderminster away. First time we played then.
Sure.
What sort of season are we talking here? Or can you remember who the manager of Tamworth was?
Mark Cooper.
Yeah, yeah, it would have been, yeah.
Are there any sort of big memorable games, away days, anything like that that you want to share?
Like I say, we had some good time. Everton was a particular good day out for us, I remember. We've done some good weekends in Lincoln and things like that. I would say Workington, but that would be an absolute lie. The football was absolutely tragic. But yeah, any of those games really. I think we got that many little individual things we can remember from so many games. There's that many that haven't been eventful in some way, really.
I think the beauty with the Tamworth games is that even if the game is pretty dreadful or the actual destination itself isn't great, there's usually plenty of different ways that the game ends up being memorable for various different reasons, whether that be mischief that's been caused, some kind of dodgy character that you meet along the way, or something unfortunate happens to somebody. And then on the odd occasion, you might actually get the game that's worthwhile watching itself.
Yeah, there's not been many of those that was there over the years, especially the pre to late conference days. I don't think we won on the road for a long time. Well, like you say, it becomes more of a social thing, doesn't it, really?
Interested in something you just mentioned, Chris, about the Everton away game. I feel like that's a game that doesn't get mentioned that much in sort of Tamworth circles, or at least on this podcast, we haven't mentioned it loads, even though it must be the most high profile opponent Tamworth have had in a competitive game, surely.
Yeah, definitely. I think at the time we took 6,000 fans there as well, and I remember a lot at the time. There's a lot made of that. We were taking more than other Premier League clubs. But yeah, again, it's a strange one that actually. I don't know why it's not talked about too much because we played well. But I don't know, maybe because didn't get the result or there's not a trophy on it or something like that. I don't know. But for me, it's a really good day out. Yeah, really good memories of it.
And Brett, I couldn't let the Workington reference go without you having a chance to regale us because I think on the when we did the greatest seasons one that I got to mention when I think it said the rain was pouring down and a bit of a thrashing was dealt out to Tamworth.
Yeah, we were 5-0 down after 35 minutes. So 6-hour coach journey, I think it was. I mean, we might as well not bother turning up that day. I almost wish we hadn't. That was a long, old, fruitless day, and there's been many of those. But again, those kind of games with that journey anyway, it's what you make of the journey itself, genuinely, especially after a result like that in a place like Workington as well.
Yeah, I think aside from that as well, take away the football, like we still have memories of that day, don't we? Like I know we having a laugh on the coach on the way up, and that pub we went in where it was about £1 for a pint or something ridiculous. There's about just us in there and a couple of the old regulars in the background, things like that. So these things do create their own little memories in a way. So the football's appalling, and you forget the football. Like I say, there's other things that you do tend to take away from the games, really.
And this is one of those places that you'd never go to unless you were going there for something like football to watch Tamworth.
To take it back to this season, I think we've spoken on recent episodes, Brett, about how good the support has been, particularly in that run in towards the end of the season. How would you compare that with what you guys would have seen back in the earlier days when you would have been going not so long? What would say a 3,000 crowd for a home league game? Would that have been something back then that would have been possible or feasible?
When you think about those kind of days, particularly the times that we've had, the last couple of years, title year aside, you'd never think that we were going back to the times where you're getting 3,000 plus attendances at the LAN. Well, I said I don't ever remember there being an attendance like that at the LAN. Obviously, Chris has been going a little bit longer than me. Chris, you were going when we did win the Doc Martins, and the attendances were regularly close to that, but never in my time.
Yeah, I think just taking my mind back to the 02-03 season, which was probably for me the greatest season in our history. Brilliant. But I remember, I think after we won the league, we played Salisbury. I think it was either the last game of the season or the second to last home game, and I think it was 2,200. And that, I remember particularly at the time, that was a massive crowd then. So what's happened since and this year has obviously surpassed that. So it just shows that the interest is still there, like 20 odd years on, which is good to see, really.
So what would your first game have been, Chris, if you were going slightly earlier than Brett?
The first game I actually remember was Bury. Went to the replay in '99, the FA Cup. It's a weird one because I've only been about 10 or 11. And I remember Tamworth scoring and then everyone behind the goal going absolutely ballistic. And I remember looking around and no one was celebrating. And it turns out we were in the home end. So I had to ask my dad what happened there. I don't know if we just left it too late to get tickets or what, but that's my first real memory. But I think the game that kicked it all off for me was another glory hunting FA Cup game, if you like. It was Rochdale. I think at the time I was more just getting into football properly a little bit, getting about 12, 13. And yeah, it was, I just remember everything about that day. It was absolutely phenomenal. Like, nothing I'd seen before. The atmosphere, I remember walking into the ground, red and black balloons everywhere, the state of the pitch. I think, after watching Match Today as a kid, like, what the hell's this? But yeah, I remember Darren Acton tipping over probably the best save I've ever seen from a Tamworth goalkeeper in that game. And then obviously the goal at the end from Lee Wilson. And went to the replay after that as well. And that's where it started, really.
So 2001, is that right? That would have been?
Was, yeah.
So I'd like to sort of get from you both a couple of your standout memories, I suppose, from the decade, the 2000s, because I guess that's when you both would have been going together regularly. So starting with you, Brett, can I get your best memory? And it can be a result or just, a trip.
Probably the best memory I can think of, and there's many others from this day as well, but this is the one that I can talk about. Hucknall away, where we were drinking in Nottingham and we needed to get over to Hucknall, which it's not that far away from Nottingham city centre, but it's not close enough that you could walk or probably get a taxi without it costing loads. So we ended up just randomly flagging down some guy who was driving past in his van, and we asked if he wanted to earn a couple of quid, and paid him some money, and we all got in the back of his van and he drove us to the Hucknall game. There was tools flying everywhere, and there was probably about 10 of us in the back of this van, lying down in this van. Pretty sure we actually lost that game. That was either the game where we lost and it started some immense pressure under Gary Mills, or it was the one towards the end of the season where we won, and then I think we were only a couple of results away then from winning the league. Chris might remember more than that.
No, I don't. I think I got hit by a spanner in the back of the van. Can't remember much from that day at all.
I've got to say, guys, for a best memory, it doesn't exactly sound like a lot of people's idea of fun. Any others from you for best memory that can top that?
Probably something similar actually. He was on about it the other day. Fun enough, it's Stockport away when we were dressed up as Noah's Ark. So we're all walking around Stockport, and then me and Brett lost everybody, and we were the two parrots. And having to walk around Stockport asking everyone if they saw Noah and the rest of the animals. That was quite an experience. People just didn't want to speak to us. And then I remember one of their fans posted on ours at the time saying that found it hilarious because we were chasing the mascot around, pecking him, the Stockport mascot, the bear. So that was a particularly funny one for me because that just sums us up really. Like, can't take us anywhere.
What about best matches then? Purely for the football or the result. Are there any standouts? Again, could be ones you attended together, or it could be separately.
I think probably for me the best match. I still think it's Bournemouth away because well we went there not really expecting anything, and when you look back on it, Carl Store a penalty saved and then scores the rebound. And then to think now that obviously Bournemouth were in the Premier League, we went there and they were decent then as well. They weren't that far away from the League One playoffs. We went there. Obviously, we were having a tough season ourselves and beat them. I went on the coach that game. I think I was only 16. I probably wasn't even 16 actually. I might have been 15. First away game that I was allowed to go to as well. It's just real stand-up memory for me. That and Hartlepool, but Hartlepool was that little bit further. It wasn't that great a day in terms of obviously going to Bournemouth, a much nicer place to go than Hartlepool. So probably Bournemouth away for me in the FA Cup.
What about you, Chris?
Bit of a random one, but I think the one that springs to mind, I think it was an unexpected win really, and that was when we played Lincoln off the park and won 4-1 at the Lamb. That's always been one of my favourite games. Obviously, look at they've done since then, and they're a big club in the league at them days. And we just played them off the park, and we didn't have the best team in them days either. And we had a good start to the season that year. And I remember thinking, oh, is this the year we break into the top half? But yeah, every one of them they played like Brazil that day. It was something else. It's my favourite thing about following Tamworth. I think it is sticking two fingers up at the bigger clubs, if you like, the bigger budgets and things. That's something that we've always thrived on being for me, the underdog. And then when we come out on top, it's always a better feeling, I think.
One game, and this only came to mind as you were just speaking just now. I think I went to this with both of you. Do you remember the Crewe Alexandra FA Cup game? 2010, I think that would have been. And I swear that we met up in town and we got a taxi for some reason to the Lamb, and you two were both asked by the taxi driver, where do you want to go? And you just both kept saying the Theatre of Dreams. And you wouldn't tell him where you wanted to go. But like, he was sat there for a good few minutes, like, but seriously, lads, like the meter's running. And also at full time, I don't think, Bright, I've ever seen you as chuffed with a Tamworth result. I don't know if that stands out for you in the same way, but because I seem to remember Tamworth played very well that day as well. Obviously beat Crewe, who finished 10th in League Two that season. So very, very solid team. Is that one you got, either of you remembers particularly well?
I remember that. Yeah, we played really well actually. I remember we absolutely played Crewe off the park. I'm sure Crewe were having a decent year as well up until that stage. And then obviously then we played Carlisle away in the second round. That was where it ended really. That start of the season was really strong for us, and it went really downhill then after Gary Mills left for York, and then it just went, that was the end.
Do you remember that day well, Chris?
Yeah. Again, it was another great FA Cup day. I mean, we've been quite sport with them really, but I think it gets probably forgotten about because of the other games that we've won. They got us into the third round and things like that. But that was a great day. That was. I remember Brett being on the floor of the shed at one point. I think when we got the one of the goals. But yeah, again, they played really well. Again, that's what you want to see. You want to see a Tampa team that's prepared to dig in and fight and get the results. And I think it was in the patch of really bad form as well at the time. So again, it was a bit more of a bit of surprise the way we played. But yeah, another great day.
I do sometimes wonder if Tamworth have maybe been a little unlucky over the years not to have more televised matches, because you think the amount of like giant killings that they've been part of in the FA Cup, and like the Everton game, I don't think that was on TV, was it? was it Norwich that was televised, I think, wasn't it? And then there was obviously the Kings Lynn League game this season, but we were saying before, weren't we, Brett? Like Tamworth haven't been on TV that much, and it's slightly surprising when you think all the big teams we've just talked about that Tamworth have beaten.
Well, we should have been on the TV against Stoke, really, when we played those, either at the Britannia or then the return leg at the Lamb. Either of those should have been on the TV because obviously that's a big, well, it's not big Staffordshire derby, but that's Staffordshire derby. When we drew to them, sorry, at the Britannia, and then when they did the highlights on Match of the Day, it panned to Mark Cooper and he was walking down the pitch doing a camera motion, obviously venting his frustration that we should have been on the telly and that we hadn't been. So I'm pretty sure the game that had been chose over us was an absolute non-event, really. But again, that's another great day as well. Stoke City, I remember going on the coach. There was all these posters that had been printed out by, I think it was BBC WM, or it might have been one of the local, I think it might have been the Birmingham Mail, and it just said, "Come on, Tamworth." There was a pop-up shop in town so you could get your merchandise from. And again, for me, really, that was the start of my Tamworth journey, if you like, because that was just further adding fuel to my interest.
Is that one you remember well as well, Chris, Stoke?
Yeah, I think the replay should have been on the telly. I couldn't see why the home game wasn't on. Them sort of games, there's a slim chance or very little chance of an upset, you'd think. The replay should have been on. It would have made a great game for the telly as well. I think in those days, though, I think wasn't as many channels and things like there is now. And to get on TV, it's a bit more of a big thing, I think. I think now it's with a National League TV and TNTs and things like that. There's not the payday in it anymore. So it's great to be on the telly, but it doesn't mean as much now, I don't think, as it did back in the day, especially to a club like us. But we've got a pretty poor record whenever we are on the telly, really. So it's probably not a bad thing that we haven't been on too much, really.
Yeah, less televised games, the better with our form. Lost to Burscough, lost to Norwich, lost
Shrewsbury.
to Shrewsbury, yeah.
Bristol City.
And Bristol City, yeah. So there's plenty of defeats. I think the only one we won was Forest Green Rovers at home to stay up.
Not to sort of rub salt in the wound, so to speak, but just been looking at that 05-06 FA Cup year. And so you guys might even remember this. So Stoke, in the next round, they got Walsall at home. And you got to think Tamworth would have probably fancied that, given the run they'd been on. Also interested just to get any standout players from the era we've been discussing, because particularly that period, it feels there were a lot of players who either played for Tamworth, played against Tamworth, who've then gone on to play in like the Premier League or the second tier. Is there anyone, Chris, for you who particularly stands out?
I'd probably say that we were in the old conference as it was in one of the glory periods of it, really, during its best period, I think. Some of the teams are in it, some of the players. There's a lot of players you see on a team sheet every week and you think, oh God, we've got to try and keep them quiet. See people like Mackall Smith, Aaron McLean, Boyd, Darryl Clare, he's always going to pop up with a couple of goals against you. Just people like that, it was a really good league, got some really good players in there.
Yeah, I think all of the above. Dennis Holly as well for Grays, Stuart Fleetwood. I don't remember Jamie Vardy when he played down. I believe he played at the Lamb, but I don't remember him. You go back to when we were playing Burton, when John McGrath moved to them from us.
Do you guys miss that Burton Albion rivalry? Because that was a regular thing, wasn't it, for some years? And then when they got into the Football League, and obviously it's gone away a bit. Is that something you'd hope to see again one day, Chris?
I don't know. It always seemed a bit manufactured to me. You see us play Nuneaton and things like that in more recent years, and you can see the levels of animosity and you can see the tension. It wasn't really with Burton. There were rivals, but it wasn't quite the same for me. But yeah, your Nuneaton and your Addistons, they're our old school rivals, and you can really tell the difference when we play those.
Do you think, say, if Burton were to find themselves in the same division as Tamworth again, do you think that rivalry would reignite in the same way, or has too much time passed?
I think it would reignite a little bit, yeah. I think just because there's not too many Midlands teams, and I'm just presuming they come back international, obviously, but I don't think there's too many Midlands teams in the national at the minute. So I think those are the sort of games we would look for, the Burton games. But yeah, it is a main rival. I'm not so sure.
I used to enjoy the Burton games, and obviously that was at the earliest start of when I was going down the Lamb. So to me at the time they were our rivals. But then, as Chris said, when you compare it to when we play in Eton, it doesn't compare really. It would be similar to if Solihull don't go up, what people will try and force that to be, because obviously there's nobody else then around.
Is there anything else from either of you on anything?
Going into next season, we've had a good couple of seasons. We expect it to be difficult. Just anyone who's never experienced the National League before, as a Tamworth fan, if you're new to the club or anything like that, just make sure you enjoy it. You don't know when these days are going to come again. So just, we're at the top level in our league. We've got peaks in charge. Anything could happen. Well, as we found out this season. So just going to be a bit of a roller coaster, but just make sure you enjoy it. That's all I can say.
I think just from the stories that we've shared from some of those games, I mean, some of those games that we're talking about that we really enjoy, we lost and we were comprehensively beaten as well. So it's not always about the result. Well, it is, it's a result driven business, but you can still experience some good memories following the club to places that you probably wouldn't ever usually go to, result aside. And I hope people do keep coming down. And I hope people continue to make stupid memories like what me and Chris have just spoke about today, because that's really important as well.
One thing about the club for me is it's like an old friend, really. Like it's the only place I think I'd go on my own. Like you won't go to the cinema on your own, or so many places in walks of life where you can go on your own. Because I'd always know that I'll be able to stand with somebody or talk to somebody, or someone I haven't saw for 5 years, or give you the same jokes and take the mick out of you the same way they did 5 years. But yeah, that's one of the main things for me. It's like it's the sense of belonging, really.
That's all for this episode of the Tamworth FC Social podcast. Thank you for listening. You can follow us on social media at TFC Social Pod. If you've enjoyed this episode, please give it a like and do subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can do that by clicking the subscribe button below this video and turning on video notifications. Until next time, goodbye.